And outspeak brave Horatius, the captain of the gate. To every man upon this earth, death cometh soon or late. And how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods?
It was time to move. While the creations were stockpiling food and supplies in the bar for the upcoming journey, Callie pulled Marisol and Blake aside. Two members of the Countermeasures Committee were standing with her just outside of the bar, Herton Forsman and the Crusader Kings developer named Bella. "We're arranging alternate transport to get everyone to Sweden," Callie said. "Marisol, we've got people raiding your hotel room now to collect your passport. Blake, we're sending your father back to Shiawassee to get yours." "I told you, I can't go to Sweden," Marisol repeated. "My job, my family." "Yes, Callie told us about those concerns," Herton replied. "But this is an emergency, unlike anything we've seen before. I understand your fear. Losing your job and letting down your family are terrible crosses to bear, but you must understand you have a part in all of this, a responsibility." "You said it yourself," Callie said. "You put so much work into Aisling, she's just as much your creation as she is Blake's. You're involved, like it or not, and you can't just go home. Not yet, anyway." Feeling backed into a corner, Marisol leaned against a wrought iron fence, casting her gaze up to the Art Deco facade of the nearby Guardian building. Two armored cars pulled up in front of the bar, where Blake Robinson's father was bundled into one and quickly driven away. A short ways off, Marisol could hear Blake making the same argument to Callie. Of course, she was not interested in letting him off the hook at all. A tiny scratching sensation at Marisol's feet caught her attention. A small house cat was clawing her ankles. "Aisling, were you eavesdropping?" Marisol whispered. The cat quickly changed into a girl. "I'm sorry," Aisling replied in a soft mumble. "I heard Callie say that thing before, and I've been meaning to ask about it." "What thing?" Marisol asked. "About how you're my creator." "But it doesn't make sense," Aisling replied. "Oh, well, I can explain that," Marisol replied. "You see, Blake is the author. He writes the story. I'm the beta reader. I am the very first person who gets to read it, which means it's my job to check for mistakes, to recommend edits or changes. When we were starting out on Last Days of the Emerald Isle, I saw a lot of things about you that, well, if they were changed, your story would be better. So I told Blake, and he made those changes." Marisol could see goosebumps rising on Aisling's arms. "So if you didn't make the author change me, I wouldn't be me?" Aisling asked, her red eyes going very wide. Yes, I suppose," Marisol replied. Suddenly, Marisol felt the breath being squeezed out of her. Aisling was hugging her very tightly. "So that means Blake is my father, and you're my mother?" Aisling said. Marisol blushed so hard she felt as though she was caught in a cloud of steam. Wait, hold on," Marisol stammered. No, that's not what I meant at all." In that moment, Marisol realized that Aisling hugging her and declaring Marisol to be her mother was the sort of painfully cute behavior that Marisol would have written, not Blake. "Oh, God, this one's my fault," Marisol thought to herself. Marisol had no idea how to tactfully reject Aisling's surprising conclusion. A long time ago, she had chosen to embrace the natural protective instincts that came along with the status of eldest sibling, and Aisling had somehow found a way to activate said instincts. "You hug the same way my sister does," Marisol mumbled as she put her arms around Aisling. "If you and Mariposa ever get together, you'd probably crush me." Reluctantly, Marisol started to accept Aisling as her own creation. And the responsibility it implied. About 10 minutes later, Marisol barged into Callie's conversation with Blake, Hurton, and Bella. They were discussing how to get the creations to Stockholm after they were unceremoniously banned from the Solarium passageway. Obviously, we need to get a plane, Hurton was saying. I can have PDX charter a jet and get it here by tomorrow afternoon. Metro Detroit is the closest airport we can fly out of, Blake said. But we'll have to get through both the TSA and U.S. Border Patrol just to reach the private jet. Like, those guys are totally going to ask a shit ton of questions when they start seeing the talking lion, Bella pointed out. Right, Hurton said. Then what can we do? Marisol raised her voice and interrupted. We've got to start breaking rules. The group turned to look at her. Like you said, Paradox Guy. Marisol had forgotten Hurton's name. This is an emergency beyond anything else. I know a couple of people who might be able to help us, but we won't be able to reach them unless we break some rules. All of the gifted characters, the one with telepathic powers, will have to get us through the airport. Blake, I've read your stories. Sebakira, Trig, and Conti have all sorts of powers that would let us get through. Yeah, that's true, Blake said. Marisol pressed her thumb into her own chest. I'm a flight stewardess for a major international airline. I can get us onto a plane through the crew terminal. Every airport has one. They make it easier for flight crews and pilots to check their bags and get onto the plane. Callie's eyes had gone wide. She was already reaching for her smartphone and calling a member of her SWAT team. Do you know someone at Asiana who can help us? Yep, Marisol said. I know one of the managers around here, and a pilot. Callie was speaking into her phone, telling her team to take all of Marisol's possessions from her hotel room and not just her passport. Find any and all documentation related to the airline she works at, Callie said. Asiana Airlines. She also ordered them to do reconnaissance on the crew terminal at Detroit Metro Airport. You know a pilot? Blake remarked with a low whistle. Whew, impressive. Not really, Marisol replied with a shrug. I'm aircrew. I've met literally hundreds of pilots, dude. Besides, it's the fact that I know both the regional manager and a pilot that's important. Oh, Blake sounded as though he was deflating. You weren't kidding, Dakara, Hurton laughed. Robinson really does live in the middle of nowhere. After a long series of calls, the plan was arranged. Blake, Marisol, all of the creations, Callie, 6 members of the SWAT team, Hurton, and Bella would travel to Detroit Metro and board the plane waiting there. The rest of the Countermeasures Committee and the rest of the SWAT team would use the magical sci-fi tunnel between the bar and Solarium to return to Sweden. Since the whole operation was Marisol's idea, Callie named their little expedition Team Marisol. Marisol hated this. Too bad, Callie replied in a joking tone. You picked up the ball of responsibility. Now you have to run with it. The creations emerged from the bar, laden with backpacks, and piled into a convoy of armored cars. Just as Blake, Marisol, Aisling, and Emily clambered into the final vehicle, it started to rain. A downpour drenched the convoy as it drove away from the bar for the final time. That doesn't feel like ordinary rain, Blake said. He rolled down the window and held his hand out while the busy cityscape of Detroit whirled past. Sebakira and Aisling both sniffed the air. I don't sense any psionics, Sebakira said. I sense magic, Aisling said. The water witch is nearby. Ushka, Blake said. That underdeveloped protag who dropped the river on us. Is she trying to slow us down? Marisol asked. Doesn't feel that way, Aisling remarked. More like she's sending a signal. Damn it, Blake said. I'll bet she's telling the rest of her teammates where we went. Callie, call the rest of your guys and tell them to be on guard for an ambush. But there was no ambush. The convoy reached Detroit Metro with time to spare. Marisol felt a tingle in her bones. As previously discussed, Conti, Sebakira, and Trig were all employing their psionic powers as soon as the cars came to a stop. Everyone out and move quickly, Trig ordered. He focused his words at Emily, who was lagging behind. She was trying to slowly soak in the psionic energy permeating her body. "That means we've got to hurry," Blake barked. He grabbed Emily by the hand and pulled her along. Marisol was amazed. Even though it was almost 5 o'clock in the morning, the international airport was abuzz with thousands of people. The trio of telepaths sent a wave of their power through the crowds. The onlookers were left in a stupefied daze, unthinking, unfeeling. "That won't last long! Move!" Conti ordered. The albino peahen spread her wings and took flight, sailing through the air and alighting on a second-floor balcony. "This way!" Team Marisol pushed through the stupefied crowd, following Conti's ear-splitting bird calls. Sebakira got down on all 4 paws and ran alongside Marisol. "We must find this crew terminal," she said. "Look for the security checkpoint," Marisol panted. "The entrance will be nearby." "TSA," Blake called out. "Find the letters TSA." "There!" Varian cried out. At least one security guard at the checkpoint had noticed the incoming disturbance and was reaching for his radio in the moment he was stupefied. Conti soared above the checkpoint, bumping her head on the ceiling. She sent several waves of psionic energy into the checkpoint, rendering travelers and staff alike too dumb to do anything other than stand still. Marisol grabbed Blake by the hand. "Follow me!" As Team Marisol entered the crew terminal, a noise from above began to grow louder. "Is that the rainstorm outside?" Mina asked. "Don't hit the guy in the Asiana office," Marisol called out. "He's our man." A middle-aged Korean man let out a scream of terror as a lion, a peahen, several humanoid aliens, and a gathering of assorted people ran toward him at high speed. "Reyes, is that you?" he gasped. "You and your, +1s?" "Yeah, it's me," Marisol panted, reaching into the backpack Callie's team had retrieved from the hotel in Flint. Marisol slammed her Asiana ID onto the desk and said, "Put us on the repo flight with Captain Yoshido. Please, I told you it's an emergency." "And so did your friend over the phone," the manager replied, scanning Marisol's ID at the computer before handing it back. "Gate 15, and please be safe. That storm out there is getting worse, and I think they might shut down the airport soon." Team Marisol ran the length of the crew terminal, and looking at the windows, they saw the manager was right. What started as a rain squall was quickly turning into a major thunderstorm. "Okay, now the Water Witch is trying to stop us," Blake yelled. "Everyone haul ass!" The team made its final sprint where a perplexed-looking Asiana employee waved them to an exit. Trig stopped just long enough to stupefy them before rejoining the group. Team Marisol passed through a boarding tunnel and found themselves on an Airbus A330 passenger jet. 2 pilots and an engineer were standing in the forward galley to greet them. The lack of surprise on their faces suggested Marisol had warned them about who was coming aboard. Turning left and into the main fuselage, Team Marisol quickly discovered the airplane was devoid of passengers. There was no one aboard save for the crew. "This is a repositioning flight," Marisol explained. "Corporate is having the plane moved somewhere else for future use. Now, everyone sit down." One of the pilots, identified as Captain Yoshido by Marisol, leaned in toward Marisol and said, "This is gonna be one hell of a story, isn't it?" "You've no idea," Marisol replied. The storm outside intensified. The sound of rain hitting the airframe was now a dull roar. It was at this moment that something rather strange happened. Marisol was a passenger on this flight by every possible metric. However, attempting to board the plane in a hurry had caused her brain to autonomously click into work mode. She pulled the intercom phone off the wall, and as the plane started to move back from the terminal, she instinctively said, "Pilot, cabin crew, starting safety brief." Perhaps because the situation was tense and very confusing, the pilot also responded autonomously, without thinking things over. "Understood. ATC says we're second in line." And then Marisol rounded on the rest of her team, who were looking at her as though she was a different person. "We're on the clock today, so you're getting the short version. My name is Marisol Reyes, and I'll be your cabin crew today. Welcome aboard Asiana Airlines. Please pay attention and obey all crew member instructions. If the seatbelt sign is on, buckle up low and below your hips. The oxygen masks are above you and will drop if there's a cabin pressure emergency. If that happens, stop screaming, pull down the mask, place over your nose and mouth, and adjust the elastic on both sides until it fits. Secure your own mask before helping the lion or peacock next to you. The bag might not inflate, but the air is flowing. Trust me. Just breathe normally. Sebakira blinked, having taken up 3 seats lying on her side. Life jackets are under your seat. Pull the red tag to inflate, but don't do it until you're off the plane. No smoking ever. It's dangerous. If there's an emergency, brace yourself on the seat in front of you. Keep your feet flat on the floor. Emergency lighting on the floors shows where the exits are. Look around now. The closest exit might be behind you. Please secure all of your belongings now and put your tray tables up, and we will take off momentarily. Blake's jaw had fallen open. Honestly, I thought you used cue cards or a teleprompter or something. You really had all that memorized? He said. Yeah, Marisol replied nonchalantly before clambering into the jump seat reserved for flight attendants and buckling her seatbelt. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Welcome aboard this highly unusual and very lucrative collaboration between Asiana Airlines and Paradox Interactive. At this time, we are number 1 in line for takeoff, but we will be flying into some heavy rainstorms, so please keep those seatbelts fastened until the light is turned off. Thank you. The plane's engines began to spool up, roaring until they drowned out the noise of the rain outside. Here we go, Blake said. Whoa, hey, what are you doing? Emily had gotten into the seat next to Blake and was holding onto him with a tight vice grip. I've never flown before, Emily whimpered. I'm scared. Please hold me. Oh, for the love of Sajuk, pull yourself together, Conti snapped. He's your creator, not your lover. Meanwhile, Aisling was looking out of the right-hand window, enraptured by the view of the runway. We're moving so fast, the fairy gasped. Aisling suddenly felt the force of gravity pushing her backwards into her seat. Alarmed, she looked around at Marisol. You haven't seen anything yet, first-time flyer, Marisol said. Hang on, it's V1. The Airbus lifted off, slipping away from Detroit and vanishing into the stormy night. Down on the ground, Ushka the Water Witch reluctantly gave up the pursuit, instead choosing to return to the hideout. She wanted to know why none of Malam's allies had answered her call for help.